Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Amanda. I am a geographer based in the United States. I was talking about in the previous video, my initial findings into my learning curve of learning about the ICC, the International Criminal Court, and the International Court of Justice. So through that, what initially got me started on this learning curve was that I had heard that there was this international warrant out for the Israeli President Netanyahu that's over a year old now. And so that got me to think about what does that actually mean, an international warrant. And really it's a multinational warrant. It's not an international or a global or a worldwide statute, because we do not have a global governing body, or we do not have a unified, every nation is not unified under this criminal court. And they also have the ability to withdraw from their support of being party to the International Criminal Court or the International Court of Justice. So, I mean, that really makes it more of a concept than an actual jurisdiction. It's odd because it's like this idea of a governing body, but it's not rooted in a geographic location, right? So, for example, like in the United States, U.S. law applies to the continent of the United States, Alaska, Hawaii. Hawaii is an island. Alaska's inside of Canada. And also United States territories, like Puerto Rico and Guam. So there is an actual geographic location that's tied to governance, right? Because if the United States, for example, just said, hey, we're just not going to have government anymore, like, we're done with that, like, that would be anarchy. And we would have no governance tied to our geographic boundaries, right? So the International Criminal Court is really, the nomenclature is just, I'm having such a hard time with that, because it's a multinational, and it's elected. Like, you can choose to be part of this, or you can choose to not be part of this, and you can, include yourself or withdraw yourself as a nation. I mean, I'm sure, like, at will, like, whenever however you decide, however that nation decides. So that got me, reading or listening to all of these podcasts that, like, Al Jazeera has put out in regards to the ICC and the efficacy of it, or the legitimacy of it. Really, if it's something, how legitimate is this? How can this be upheld realistically? Is this something that is just going to fade over time? And that's entirely dependent upon who remains part of this concept, right? Because if you're down to, it started out, I think, 2 countries in 1999. It initially, the ICC started. The International Court of Justice has been around since 1946, but the International Criminal Court is fairly recent, from 1999. So, and that was started by 2 countries. And so arguably it wasn't an international, it was a dual national. And, I would say, like, if you have upwards of 4 countries that are signed on to this, then it would be multinational. But, if you have 2 countries initially, it would be a dual national court of justice. If you have 3 countries signed up for it, it would be a tri-national court of justice. So anything upwards of 3, I'm guessing, just it would be a multinational. So, until we have a global governance, it's not international, it's just multinational. But words are important, because without words, then we can't understand, we have no way really to understand the meaning of things if we don't put words to it, right? That is incredibly human concept. And without words, we don't have a way to give deep contextual meaning to things. So I think you could say it's splitting hairs, but on that high of a level, I think you need to split hairs. If you are not splitting hairs at the international, at the multinational, at the global level, if you are not splitting hairs, that's when things fall through the cracks, right? Because if, as a geographer, right, I'm trying to look at things at scales, at various scales. So on the macro scale, on the global scale, right, you have to have an incredibly deep understanding and articulation of things, so that when you zoom in to the micro level, to the city level, if you're talking global and then you zoom into the city level, all of that needs to translate to ruling at a city level, right, at a municipal level. So where was I going with that? So again, brings me back to this, the argument of Israel, and my thoughts on the state of Israel are so back and forth. I do not have a finite opinion on this, because for a myriad of reasons. So it's a really new country, right? Like, the state of Israel has only been the state of Israel since 1948. So, we're seeing, it's really interesting, because this is literally what humans do, right? Humans go, they find a bit of earth, and then they say mine, and then they populate that bit of earth and create rules and regulations, and more humans in that process that regurgitate those rules and regulations. And that's how culture is formed, right? So, it's interesting to see that in real time, because, in our recent history, it's a really great example in recent history of how culture, of how ethnicity is created. Because before 1948, the ethnicity of Israeli did not exist. It wasn't anything at all. There was obviously the religion, Judaism was a religion, but there was no actual state associated with that, unless you go back to, I don't know however far back that is in history, but is it the Anasazi Jewish, which is linked in DNA. So is it called Anasazi? Oh, if I'm getting that wrong, I am so sorry. Ashkenazi, Anasazi is an alien thing. I'm sorry. It's Ashkenazi. Is there's so much in my head right now. So the Ashkenazi Jewish lineage is tracked by DNA, and Ashkenaz. If you Google it, you will find the exact literation of that. Anasazi is not that. So anyway, so the state of Israel and this ethnicity that is now Israeli is new, but this is how we're seeing how ethnicities are created. So in terms of the efficacy, the legality, like should Israel exist, at the micro scale and looking at, you know, how it has displaced Palestinians and now created this insatiable conflict in the Gaza Strip, there's an argument that Israel should not exist, that the state of Israel should not exist. But if we say that the state of Israel should not exist, then we can keep going back. We can go back to, you know, the Hajar dynasty in Iran, and we can go back to Cyrus, and we can go back to, you know, the Greeks and you know, territorial geographical claims, and say, well, it's unless you can pick a singular point in time and say this is when we're agreeing, which is arbitrary. It's just like state jurisdictions and redlining. Like, it's all geographically based and it's all temporally based. So as time changes, those boundaries change, and it's, you know, that's just how humans are. So the fact that Israel does exist means that it does, so it should, right? You cannot obliterate a state that is now already well established and functioning. So as far as that goes, the state of Israel has every right to be the state of Israel. And we can't zoom into that time in 1948 and say, well, because then we're picking and choosing what times that we're saying is, you know, okay to do this and times that it is not okay to do this. So what stops people then, what stops nations from going in and staking claim and carving out countries or space, and it doesn't. Like, I think that literally is what is happening in Ukraine right now, right? Like, Russia is trying to take Ukraine back into its geography, into its territory. So this is a human thing. This has been ongoing since humans. I mean, this is the existence of humans. This is human nature, unfortunately. So, you know, it's unfortunate that it's happening with so much conflict. And I think therein lies the discrepancy, is that if there wasn't so much conflict and turmoil in the Gaza Strip, for example, then there would not be this upheaval of, you know, questioning if the state of Israel should be the state of Israel. I think it's so interesting to see in real time how ethnicity is created, right? Because all of the people that are in Israel now and are procreating are creating then they're creating an ethnicity. I think that's just really interesting. And so there's that. So with bringing this back into the International Court of Justice, like, that could have been brought up theoretically in 1948, 2 years after the International Criminal Court was created, crimes against Palestine, right? Like the entire state of Palestine was carved out and carved up into, carving out this state of Israel in Palestine. So that could have been brought to the International Court of Justice since it began in 1946, and the state of Israel was established in 1948. And I guess if we're doing it that way, if we're saying that if we're temporally situating this when the governing bodies were established, and that is how we're understanding, like, if we can say, like, this has legitimacy to be a state, or this does not, like, that could be one argument for that. However, the state of Israel has not been called into question into the International Court of Justice for disrupting the livelihood of the state of Palestine. So that is where I'm at right now in looking at things. I am really interested in the environmental aspect of this. I saw something briefly that the International Criminal Court had tried people for, was it whaling? Something. So once I understand the human geography side of this, the geopolitical side of these idealistically governing bodies, I would like to look into the environmental, the non-human environmental, so animals, non-human animals, and the environment, and how that is working within the ICC and the ICJ, because that's just interests me. So that's where I'm at for today. Let me know, what are your thoughts on Israel, how it relates to the the efficacy of it being an established state. Do you think that this is something that we can renege on now? And then but again, that would have so many ramifications. Like, then there's an entire populace of people that would be displaced also, and then where would they go? Like, they would be a stateless group of people now, because they have procreated over generations since 1948. So, I mean, it's just, it is cumbersome. This is potentially why we need a global governance and a unified planet. Where is Captain Planet when you need him? So, yes, curious what your thoughts are on Israel and Palestine and the human rights involved in that, as well as how it could potentially relate back to the International Criminal Court, as far as Netanyahu's multinational warrant is concerned. Yes, so let me know. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next one. Bye.